नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरये नष्टप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवती उत्तम श्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्ठिकी मूकं करोति वाचालं पङ्गुलङ्घयति गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे श्रीगुरुं दीनतारिणं श्रीपरमानन्दमाधवम्। So today we are reading from Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter 3, text 40. Indriyani Manaha Buddhi Asya Adhishtanam Uchyate Etai Vimohayati Esa Jnanam Abritya Dehinam Indriyani Mano Buddhi Asyadhishtanam Uchyate Etarvimohayatyasa Jnanam Abritya Dehinam Indriyani Mano Buddhi Asyadhishtanam Uchyate Etarvimohayatyasa Jnanam Abritya Dehinam Indriyani Mano Buddhi Asyadhishtanam Uchyate Etarvimohayatyasa Jnanam Abritya Dehinam Indriyani Mano Buddhi Asyadhishtanam Uchyate Etarvimohayatyasa Jnanam Abritya Dehinam Indriyani Mano Buddhi Asyadhishtanam Uchyate Etarvimohayatyasa Jnanam Abritya Dehinam. Mataji. Indriyani Mano Buddhi Asyadhishtanam Uchyate Etarvimohayatyasa Jnanam Abritya Dehinam Indriyani Mano Buddhi Asyadhishtanam Uchyate Etarvimohayatyasa Jnanam Abritya Dehinam. Indriyani, the senses, Manaha, the mind, Buddhi, the intelligence, Asya, of these lusts, Adhishtanam, sitting place, Uchyate, is called Etai, by all these, Vimohayati, builders, Esaha, this lust, Jnanam, knowledge. Avritya, covering. Dehinam, of the embodied. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Translation. The senses, the mind, and the intelligence are the sitting places of this lust. Through them, lust covers the real knowledge of the living entity and bewilders him. Purport. The enemy has captured different strategic positions in the body of the conditioned soul. And therefore, Lord Krishna is giving hints of those places so that one who wants to conquer the enemy may know where he can be found. Mind is the center of all the activities of the senses, and thus when we hear about sense objects, the mind generally becomes a reservoir of all ideas of sense gratification. And as a result, the mind and the senses become the repositories of lust. Next, the intelligence department becomes the capital of such lustful propensities. Intelligence is the immediate next door neighbor of the spirit soul. Lusty intelligence influences the spirit soul to acquire the false ego and identify itself with matter, and thus with the mind and the senses. The spirit soul becomes addicted to enjoying the material senses and mistakes this as true happiness. This false identification of the spirit soul is very nicely explained in the Srimad Bhagavatam 10:84-13. यस्यात्म बुद्धि कुणपेति धातुके स्वधि कलत्रादिषु भूम इज्जधि यतीर्थ बुद्धि सलिले न कैरिचे जनेषु अभिज्ञेषु सैव गोखरः. A human being who identifies this body made of three elements with itself, who considers the byproducts of the body to be his kinsman, who considers the land of birth worshipable, and who goes to the place of pilgrimage simply to take a bath rather than meet men of transcendental knowledge there, is to be considered like an ass or a cow. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana-Salakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Sapadam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Tapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunatha Nitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Visakha Nitam Sam. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpati Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastade Tapta Kancana Gaurangi Radhi Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhana Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Vanchakalpatarubhasya Kripa Sindhu Devasya Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo 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 Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namah Gaurati Namo. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gauravaktamanda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. So here in this verse of Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna is explaining the sitting places of lust and how this lust covers the knowledge of the embodied spirit soul. So before speaking about these sitting places of lust, we have already read in previous verses that Arjuna has raised a very important question to Krishna, which is generally raised by human beings, that sometimes we do not want to commit sinful activities, but we do act sinful as if we are forced to do this. So Arjuna is asking this question to Krishna, that why is it so that sometimes the living entity does not want to commit sinful activities, but is forced to do this activity, sinful activity. So what is the reason? Then Lord Krishna says that it is lust only. Because of lust, the living entity, even if he does not want, still he is forced to do this. And this lust is the greatest enemy, foremost enemy of the living entity. So as we see that how the living entity's knowledge is covered by this lust, Krishna is explaining gradually. And when the lust is not fulfilled, then it transforms into wrath, and then it transforms into illusion, then this chain reaction goes on, as we have read previously. So the lust is the foremost enemy. There are actually 6 enemies of the living entity. Of course, in this material world, we consider other living entities as our enemies because sometimes one may work favorably towards us or sometimes unfavorably. So accordingly we consider, okay, he's my friend or he's my enemy. So all these different living entities, they are actually not someone's enemy or someone's friend. It is just because of the mental conception of the living entity that he thinks someone is enemy or someone is friend. Because he thinks that if someone is favorable to him, he is friend, and someone is not favorable, he is his enemy. But actually the living entity is suffering from his previous sinful reactions. Whatever activities he has performed, he gets the results through different living entities, through different situations. So all those living entities, they work as the via media to give that other living entity the result of his activities. But the living entity's real enemies, they are within his heart. But the living entity does not know this. He sees his enemies outside, but he doesn't know that his enemies are already sitting within his heart. So, among those enemies, lust is the foremost one. Lust, anger, greed, then false ego, illusion, envy. So all these 6 enemies are there, and it is within the heart of the living entities. And that is, these enemies are actually not allowing us to turn our face towards Krishna. They are always keeping us absorbed in materialistic sense gratification. So the foremost enemy is the lust, which is Krishna is telling, which is coming from passion. Because the living entity is under the 3 modes of material nature, and among the 3 modes of material nature, passion and ignorance, they are actually dragging the living entities into lower modes and dragging them into sense gratification. So this lust is coming from passion, and Lord Krishna is describing that the lust is sitting in 3 places. Because when we have to fight an enemy, we have to find out where is the enemy. Because when there is a battle, then one has to know where is the enemy, then one can fight with the enemy. So Krishna is giving in this verse the sitting places where we can find this enemy, lust. So there are 3 sitting places of lust. The one sitting place is the senses. We have 5 senses, and the senses are their sense objects. And as soon as the sense object comes in front of the eyes, naturally the senses are attracted to sense objects. And then the information goes to the mind, and then mind makes the plans how to enjoy that sense object. So one sitting place of lust is the senses, and the other one is the mind. Because mind is controlling all the senses. So whatever knowledge we acquire through the senses, it is immediately reported to the mind. And then mind makes plans. Initially mind actually thinks. There are 3 things of the mind: thinking, feeling and willing. As soon as the sense comes in contact with the object of the sense, then thinking process starts in the mind. And then initially, before getting that sense object, the mind first thinks that if I get that sense object, what type of pleasure I will get. The mind will realize that pleasure within itself before even getting the sense object. So that is thinking process. The mind thinks that how much pleasure can be derived from the sense object. And then first it thinks about the sense object, then feels. That feeling is in the mind only. The things have not happened yet. The senses have not come in contact with the sense objects. But the feeling has already started in the mind. What type of happiness one can get. And when the mind thinks itself that I will get this type of happiness, then he wills. He wants to get that sense object. Then he makes the plan. And then when mind makes the plan, mind uses the intelligence. So the intelligence, the plan is made how to get the sense object. So in this way, three objects are three places are there for the lost, sitting places: intelligence, mind and senses. And they all come together to make plan, to get the sense object to enjoy. So Srila Prabhupada says in this purport that how the knowledge is covered by this lust. When this process starts, then intelligence becomes contaminated because of the mind, because mind wants to gratify the senses. And he uses the intelligence to make the plan. So intelligence is already contaminated, because the intelligence gives the plan for sense gratification. And Prabhupada says that intelligence is the neighbor of the spirit soul. So the spirit soul, which is originally pure, but the spirit soul comes in contact with the intelligence, contaminated intelligence. And then this spirit soul, because of this contaminated intelligence, he thinks that he is this body. In this way, this misconception starts. The knowledge is covered. The spirit soul is supposed to think that his spirit soul part and parcel of Krishna. Jivera Swarupa hai Krishna Nityadas. In pure state, the spirit soul is Krishna's servant. But when the spirit soul comes in contact with the material nature and through material nature with contaminated mind, then the knowledge is covered, the real knowledge is covered. And when knowledge is covered, then the living entity thinks he is this body, material body. Instead of thinking he is the spirit soul, he thinks he is this material body. And then when the spirit soul thinks he is this material body, then he thinks that material bodily enjoyment is the real enjoyment, which is actually not. Where this bodily enjoyment or the sensory enjoyment has a beginning and has an end. That's why Krishna says in another place, Yehi sansparsada bhoga dukkha yonayevate adyantavantakanteya natesu ramate buddha. Those who are intelligent persons, they don't take pleasure in this material sense gratification, because they understand that this material sense gratification has a beginning, has an end. And this comes from material sense perception. That's why this material sense gratification or the happiness derived from this material sense gratification is temporary. So those who are intelligent persons, they are not after this temporary happiness. Intelligent persons, they want permanent happiness, unending happiness. That's why when someone's knowledge is covered, then he can only think about this temporary happiness. He cannot think of unending or permanent happiness. So the living entity, when he comes in contact with the devotees of the Lord, by great fortune, if a living entity comes in contact with a devotee of the Lord and he hears from him about Krishna and how to become happy eternally, then he comes to his senses. He gets some knowledge, because his knowledge was covered, but by the association of saintly devotees, by hearing from them about Krishna, about one's eternal position, then one will come to his senses. And if he follows the saintly person to purify the mind, the intelligence and the senses, then gradually he can get back his real knowledge. That's why it has been stated that avismriti Krishna padara vindaya shinonti abhadrani chasotanuti. That if a living entity hears in the association of devotees that one has to remember the lotus feet of Krishna all the time. Lord Krishna says this again and again, that manmana bhava madhbhakta. You become my devotee, always think of me. So thinking about the lotus feet of Krishna is actually drives away. When someone thinks about the lotus feet of Krishna, avismriti Krishna padara vindaya khinanti abhadrani chasapana. That can drive away all the abhadras or inauspiciousness. Thousands of inauspiciousness will be driven out just by remembering the lotus feet of Krishna. So, when the living entity in this way remembers Krishna, and how one can remember Krishna? By chanting his holy name. When one chants the holy name, he becomes purified. His intelligence, his mind gradually becomes purified. And then he hears at the same time. When he chants, then he hears. So, in this way, his mind is concentrated and then he thinks about Krishna. So, these three things goes on simultaneously. Chanting, hearing and thinking. Thinking of Krishna. So in this way, when one's mind is absorbed in Krishna's lotus feet, then automatically all the inauspiciousness will be driven away. His mind and senses will be purified, intelligence will be purified. That means the lust which is sitting in these three places, the lust will be also purified. Because it has been stated that originally the living entity had love for Krishna in his pure state. But that same love has been transformed into lust. Because as soon as the living entity wants to enjoy separate from Krishna, then he is covered by this lusty desire. So this lusty desire has to be cleansed and transformed again into love for Krishna. And this is the process given in the scriptures. How to transform this lust into love for Krishna. So it is said that Kshinoti Abhadrani Satam Nati. So when one remembers the lotus feet of Krishna, then all this inauspiciousness is driven out, and specifically the inauspiciousness of forgetting Krishna or turning one's face towards Krishna. This is actually those who are not turning their face towards Krishna. That is called Krishna Vimukta. Who is Krishna Vimukh? Means they are turning their face away from Krishna. That is the most inauspicious thing in one's life. That if someone is turning his face away from Krishna, that is the most inauspicious thing in his life. So when one comes in contact with saintly devotees and in their association hears about Krishna and then follows their instruction, he chants the holy name of Krishna, remembers Krishna, then this most auspicious thing, Krishna Vimukta, means turning away the face from Krishna, this inauspiciousness is eradicated. Means he will turn again his face towards Krishna by following this process. And when one will turn his face towards Krishna and think of Krishna's lotus feet all the time, then what happens? Na sattvancha suddhi. His real identity, that he is the real, the part and parcel of Krishna, the spirit soul will be revived. Sattvancha suddhi. So when one thinks about Krishna, turns his face towards Krishna, then gradually by Krishna's mercy and thinking about Krishna's lotus feet, then this lusty desire, the enjoying propensity from his heart will gradually diminish. This is a gradual process. It may not happen immediately, but this is a gradual process. By following this process, then this lusty desire to enjoy material sense gratification will diminish. And gradually one's heart will be purified, his mind will be purified, mind will be cleansed of this material contamination. Sattvancha suddhi. And when the mind will be purified, then naturally the intelligence also will be purified and the senses will be purified. Because when the lusty desire will diminish, then naturally the attraction for Krishna will develop. The more we think about Krishna, the attraction for Krishna will develop more and more. Because in this material world we say, whatever we think in our minds, our attraction goes there. If we think about a person again and again, more often, naturally our attraction will be towards that person. We will develop attachment towards that person. If we think about any sense object, always thinking about a particular sense object, how can I get that? Then naturally our attraction will go there. We will develop attachment for that sense object. So if we, instead of these material sense objects, if we think about Krishna all the time, then naturally our attraction will go towards Krishna. We will develop natural attachment towards Krishna. And that is the reason why Krishna is again and again stating that you always think of me. That's why he said, Avismriti Krishna Padar Vidya. Avismriti means no vismriti, no forgetfulness. Always remembering the lotus feet of Krishna. That is Avismriti. Always remembering the lotus feet of Krishna. Vismriti means forgetting the lotus feet of Krishna. That's why he said, Smartavya Satatam Vishnu. Vismartavya na jatuchit. 24 hours one is supposed to remember Lord Vishnu or Krishna. Even for a moment, one should not forget. If we remember Krishna's lotus feet all the time, and naturally when we sleep, we will also see the dream of Krishna. If we are always remembering, in dream also Krishna will come. So in this way we can remain Krishna conscious 24 hours. And then Sattvancha Suddhi, Paramancha Bhakti. So when we will be free, gradually free from this lust. And when we become free from lust, naturally the other enemies like anger, greed, false ego, envy, all those things, illusion. So all those things will also gradually diminish. And then when we will be situated in our real position as servant of Krishna, then we can perform Paramahansa Bhakti. We can perform pure devotional service. Because at that time we will have no material desire left within us. Because through this process, all these material desires will go away. And there will be only one desire developed, how to satisfy Krishna. So a devotee will not desire anything for himself. He will only think how to satisfy Krishna by his body, mind and words, and even sometimes with his life. That is Paramahansa Bhakti. That is pure devotional service. When a devotee only thinks about Krishna's happiness. Paramahansa Bhakti, Jnanam cha Vijnana Viraga Bhaktam. And then naturally, Jnana, knowledge, this knowledge which was covered by this lust, then the real knowledge will shine within our heart. We can understand our position as a spirit soul, and we can understand our relationship with the Supreme Soul, with Krishna. And then we will realize Jnana Vijnana, and we will realize that knowledge. Not only will understand our relationship with Krishna, but the realization will also follow with this. And that realization will be Viraga Yukta. Viraga Yukta means with detachment. That realization will come with material detachment. Because naturally we will lose the interest in material sense gratification. When we will become more and more attached to Krishna and enjoy Krishna's service. When we please Krishna, naturally we will be also pleased. So we will get pleasure in Krishna's service, then naturally we will lose the taste of material sense gratification. This is a natural process. So in this way, we can conquer our lust. Like Srila Prabhupada gives the example that how all these enemies can be employed in Krishna's service. Like Hanuman, he employed his wrath in Lord Ramchandra's service by burning Lanka. The gopis, they employed their lust in serving Krishna. Though their love was seen as lust, actually that was not lust, that was the pure love, but it was seen externally as a lust. That's why it is said that the gopis used their lust in the service of Krishna, but they had developed pure love for Krishna. So in this way, the devotees, they engage all these different attributes they have got in Krishna's service, and in this way they perfect their life. So here in this verse, Krishna is telling us to how to detect our enemy and how to conquer our enemy. Jahi Satru Mahabhav. Krishna says that, O Arjuna, O mighty armed Arjuna, you conquer this lust. This is the biggest enemy. So this lust can be conquered in this way by engaging in Krishna's service, and to engage in Krishna's service we need devotee association. In devotee association it is very easy to engage in Krishna service. That's why it has been said, Sangena Sadhu Bhaktana, that with the association of saintly devotees, Sangena Sadhu Bhaktana, Ishvara Aradhanena. With the association of saintly devotees, one should worship Lord Krishna. One should serve Krishna. That is very pleasurable. And Sadhya tat kathayancha. And a devotee should always have eagerness to hear about Krishna from the mouths of the saintly devotees. And kirtane guna karamana. And when one will hear from the mouth of a saintly devotee about Krishna, then he will chant, glorify the attributes or the qualities and activities of Krishna. So he will hear and then he will glorify, chant Krishna's activities and qualities. And then tat padamburuva dhyanat. And when one sufficiently hears about Krishna and sufficiently chants Krishna's glories, then he can easily remember Krishna's lotus feet. Tat padam bhuruva dhyanat. He can easily remember Krishna's lotus feet all the time. And tallinga ikshana adihi, arana adihi. And one should every day see the beautiful form of Krishna in the temple. That is also part of devotional service. To get darshan of the Lord in his deity form in the temple. And worship the Lord. Do some service for the Lord. And in this way we develop attachment for the Lord. So these are the processes given by which we can conquer this lust and his friends, anger, greed, etc., and purify our existence and get back the real knowledge of the self. And in this way we can perform pure devotional service at the lotus feet of Krishna. Hare Krishna. Are there any comments or questions?